this thing that I'm talking about today is called The Thing Itself. I kind of had a chuckle because it's a tradition to talk about the first 4 sections of the introduction of the textbook that is all about who we are and what we do. But to put The Thing Itself as the title of today's presentation, like in Natural Awakenings under the calendar listing, I mean, maybe because it was so mysterious, that's why you came. What is that, anyway? So we're going to talk about what that is, anyway. So, there's this thing about freedom. The thing about freedom in terms of metaphysics, which is what we do here, is that we're free, right? We're free. Okay, yeah, so what about that? Apparently we also live in an abundant universe. We hear it all the time now, right? We've heard it from Oprah and Deepak Chopra and everybody in The Secret and everybody at What the Belief and everybody everywhere these days is telling us that we live in a field of infinite possibility. Okay. Well, if that's so, how come so many of us are experiencing bondage and limitation and lack and difficulty and strife? I don't get it. Well, there's this thing about freedom that has a really important caveat that actually makes it possible. Think about it. You may have been designed, and I believe we all are, by a universal intelligence that has designed and created you and wired you and built you and everything to be able to handle, like divine circuitry, all of the good that there is. But if you got it all in a single download right now, how would that work for you? Just might be a little bit too much, to get it all at once. So maybe, that's my personal opinion, that's one reason why we don't get it all at once. The other thing is that in order for us to be free, we have to be able to choose. We're self-aware. We get to choose. We get to say yes or no thank you. We get to know or forget. But we were just in our meditation this morning, which was beautifully led by Aggie, reading some words from Ernest Holmes. And by the way, she'll be available for prayer afterwards. You do want to get in on that. I remembered a phrase during the meditation, which I learned from this woman who invited me to a Christian Bible study when I was in college, a freshman year. And I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot. She's so nice. And I didn't stay because it wasn't a good fit for me, but I learned one thing from her that I remember all this time since 1980. She said, there are no ifs in God's world. And at first I thought that was quite trite. I hadn't been exposed to the science of mind and spirit yet. I hadn't been exposed to metaphysics yet. And maybe I've been dabbling in some kind of books that I read in my teens, but I didn't know a whole lot just yet. Think about that. There are no ifs in God's world. Maybe IF just means I forgot. Maybe IF just means I forgot. Maybe IF also means I'm free. So, this thing about having freedom and living in an abundant universe, and then, why do we have all this stuff going on? Might be that in order for us to be free, we have to have the freedom to choose. The more we step into the exploration of this teaching called the science of mind and spirit, which is an amalgam of all of the ancient, tried and true, and things that just, they're constant, they're abiding bits of wisdom from around the world. And they're confirmed every day by new science. That's all that is. But this teaching is really about the thing itself, which is that power within us that has never been violated. And by the way, when you talk about the textbook, it's just plagiarism right from the start. So Ernest Holmes inspired, in fact, wrote many of the words that I'm sharing today. And sometimes I'm going to read a quote and I'll tell you that. But this comes from our founder. So, we're free. We live in an abundant universe. There's something within us which has never been violated, which has always known. It's that thing that yearns and that quests and that seeks. And perhaps when we were children, we were told to just disregard it, pipe down, pay attention, stop daydreaming. You can't do that. It turns out that that voice was right. But it loves us so much, it will never say, I told you so. It'll just keep offering up the truth. Every time we ask, every time we seek and we knock, there will be an answer, there will be an opening there. That is the voice to listen to. So we have that. And we have this idea, you've heard it in many songs and many philosophies, that all of life is love. Love is all there is. Love is all you need. Love is it. And we know by this point that it's more than romantic love. It is something uncontainable and indescribable that takes any form that will open to it and creates beauty and magnificence. It amplifies color. It shows depth. It shows things that we wouldn't have seen before. It's in all of life. It is all life. So there's that. And then there's this thing called the law. We talk about, you know how much easier it probably is to talk about this today than it may have been before? We talk about law, and we're not talking about, policemen. We're not talking about the letter of the law that makes sure that any organization or community or state or union or country works, smoothish. I don't know, attempts to do that. We're talking about universal law. And how wonderful that nobody's shaking their head saying, I've never heard of universal law before. Because we have been evolving in this understanding for a long time. So universal law is the way that we approach this love. In a nutshell, what law does as part of all that is that it responds. It corresponds perfectly to whatever we put into it. It corresponds perfectly to whatever we put into it. It is the mechanical part of the universe that responds to what we think and what we feel and what we say and produces accordingly. That's what it does. So when we say, well, just a minute, if we're free and we live in an abundant universe, well, how come so many people are suffering? The answer is actually that we may not know, we may not yet know, or we may not know to a great enough degree the real relationship between our thinking and our feeling and what shows up as our experience because of that law, because of that responsive, creative aspect of all that is. Interesting thing. We have something that we often refer to as our subconscious mind. Everybody knows what that is. There's also a universal subconscious. In our work, we often refer to both of these as the subjective. Subjective means subject to. It means that it's subject to something. Its activity, what it does because something calls it to. Well, the thing about this law, this creative principle, this subjective mind with a capital S and a capital M, we are one with it at the level of a personal subjective. Suffice it to say that you're one with all that is at the level of your subconscious mind. And we talked about this last week when we were going through our ritual ending and wrapping up and recording the history of last year and walking eyes wide open and clear and powerful into the new year. We talked about how what we think today becomes memory and that memory is created. And we talked about where memory that's creative hangs out. Same place. Okay? So just know in your heart of hearts, in your gut of guts, in that voice, that still small voice in that place is where you're one with everything. Okay, so we got that. Well, that's also the same address as the law. You've heard of the law of attraction, the law of cause and effect. We also call it the law of correspondence. We have that funny song that says, I fought the law and the law won. Right? But you know what? The law is on our side. The law is affirmative. It only wants good for us. If you imagine that this, you know how a computer is created on the basis of binary code? Well, this is unary, this is mono, this is one. There's one code, and it is yes. So this law can only operate subject to what we put into it, and its only answer is yes. It can only give exactly and perfectly and precisely according to the nature. Let me see if I can find those words. I wrote them really big. Something like this. The nature and the quality and the emotion and the conviction of those thoughts. I think I either got them perfectly or close enough. The nature of those thoughts. The conviction that we have about them. Their quality. Ernest Holmes is always saying, to the degree that. And what this means is that law, that creative law in the universe, that always says yes, and that makes form according to whatever is impressed upon it, responds. It responds to what we think. Consciousness is the key. Consciousness is the thing that directs that to make stuff. Wind and rain and emotional storms and happy occasions and things that go well and things that don't. The quality of our consciousness in every moment activates that constantly responsive, never resting thing to produce accordingly. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. We are free. We live in an abundant universe full of infinite possibility, and there's something within us that has always known. Think about that. Something within us that has never even contemplated the idea of being separate from that. But it can't force itself on us. We have to choose it. So it's ever present within each one of us, awaiting our discovery, ready with an answer, ready with a solution. And when we tune into it, you know you've had those days. You know, those days are like magic. The other day, I was looking for a songbook because it has lyrics and little symbols in it. Actually, we're going to use it today, shortly. And I walked into this room, and there's a bookshelf in front of me, and there are lots of songbooks. And my eyes went right to the one with corrugated black spine, and I just knew it was in that book. There's no identification on the spine of this notebook at all. I just know I'm in the right neighborhood. I pick it up, and I open to that song. And as I was reaching for it, I said, this is God working. That's how it can be for us in every moment. That is the thing itself. And that is what it is there for. It's within every one of us. Ernest Holmes calls this the greatest discovery of all time. First we say, I think, therefore I am. And then we say, wow, look what happens when I think. There's an interesting point when we step into this teaching of the science of mind and spirit. Because we look around us and say, oh, if all of this is a reflection back to me of what I have been thinking and feeling and believing, and some of it I don't really care for, whatever will I do about that? You don't get out the big stick and start to do this, by the way. We're not Franciscans, okay? Don't beat yourself up. Just say, oh, how interesting. I must have been ready to make that discovery. And here I am now. So we have that. One of the lines that I found in here, I think it's even better than change your thinking, change your life, from Ernest Holmes, is to learn to think is to learn to live. Isn't that nice? Learn to think, learn to live. Learn to think, learn to live. I was speaking of one of those moments when we get into class and you realize, oh darn, if no one else is to blame, because I know I'm free, and I seem to be manifesting abundance in terms of lack or strife or limitation, I gotta go look in the mirror. And remember to keep your hands off the bat or whatever. I had a colleague, she used to call it my little pink metaphysical hammer. I'd be like, every time I discovered something that I didn't know already, the habit had been to beat myself up for not having known it sooner, which is pretty useless, as you can imagine. So, you reach that point. Some people walk out the door, right? Oh, shucks, what I really wanted is for you to tell me exactly how it is. Tell me what's next. Who am I going to meet? What will he or she look like? When will this happen? How will I know? What should I do? We don't offer those answers here. We help one another to identify with that voice within which knows every answer, every direction, every solution, every choice, and every moment, even when we're sleeping, especially when our minds are still. We're not a teaching center. Excuse me, that's backwards. We're not a preaching center. We're a teaching center. On paper, we're a 501c3 nonprofit church organization, and it pretty much stops there. We get together to celebrate the presence of that knowingness and that creative power within each and every one of us. We help one another to discover it, and then we practice using it together. And in so doing, amazing and wonderful things happen. And we can't help but tell one another about them. That's what we do. So we're free and we live in an abundant universe, and we have this thing within us which knows. And we have this power called the conscious mind, which directs the creative activity of the subjective to produce accordingly. This happens when we don't know. And that's the stuff that you discover that you didn't realize you participated in the creation of. And it happens when you do know. So rather than beating ourselves up or running out the door saying, no, I prefer something a little tidier, say, wait a minute. This is powerful. This is the key to my liberty. Now, once again, I'm going to see if I can find what I wanted to share with you. Man's thought, falling into his subjective mind, merges with the universal subjective mind and becomes the law in his life. There's that word law again. Well, the thing about having something become law in our lives is this. We have infinite knowledge, everything possible we could ever need. In that wave state, that unmanifest state of infinite possibility. And we have everything that's ever been realized, and every thought about it, and every memory about it, every record of it, all the evidence of it, it's all there. So a principle, a universal principle such as this one, called the law of mind, that produces according to what is impressed upon it. A principle is a law. A principle will act and behave and produce the same way for us every time. And what that means is that anyone can use it. It's especially handy if someone else has already discovered it, because it's easier to understand. They likely made notes about their process and about their discovery. They likely wrote books and created teachings even, perhaps, to help us understand. Another key to using this power effectively in our lives for a specific purpose is understanding. The idea is that anything that we know that we fully understand and know to the point where it's part of us, where we embody it, becomes law in our life. Meaning that from this point forward, that's where we're living from. It is the truth of our experience. There's no variation. Because when you're dealing with a law, it isn't one thing on Monday and another on Tuesday and another on Wednesday, depending on the direction of the wind or the stock market or anything, or somebody's mood. It's always the same. So when we learn to work with any principle, we do this, and again, some of this is in the textbook, we do this when we mix colors. Anybody can use the same principles to mix colors and get the same outcome. Anybody can work with numbers mathematically and get the same outcome to the degree that you understand how to do that. Right? It's the same with electricity, the same with water. It's the same with aerodynamics. It's the same with everything. You take a principle, it always behaves the same way. To the degree that you understand it, it can give to you what it has to give. So what do you do when you come up against an area where there's you fill out one of those pie charts that says how you're doing in different areas of your life and you got this big hole over here? You don't say, oh, woe is me, I'm different, I can't have that. Go find out more about it until you understand it better, until you actually know something about it. Because to the degree that you know something about it, it will become part of your experience. Many of us have done this. We've done this with like life purpose, calling, career stuff. We've done it with relationships. We've done it with finances. We're really not born poor or born unlikable or born whatever. We have it all. It seeks expression by means of us. And if we have an area in our lives where it appears to be missing, it will become apparent to the degree that we know it. We know it by studying it, by building our understanding. So that's a big key. The bottom line is that it is done unto us as we believe. That's the bottom line. There are a couple of little sweet things from Ernest Holmes that I also want to share with you. Man, by thinking, can bring into his experience whatsoever he desires, if he thinks correctly. Behind the individual is the universal, which has no limits. Now, wouldn't that be a good bumper sticker? You know, there's one that says, behind every successful man, there is a great woman. Well, or behind every successful woman, there is a great man. Well, this is behind every successful being, there is a great universe. That's true, without exception. Yes, here are the qualities of thought that I was looking for earlier. Nature, impulse, emotion, and conviction. What is the nature of your thought? What is the impulse behind it? Sometimes that's also called motive. What is the emotion accompanying it? What is your level of conviction about it? All thoughts are creative. Now hold on to your hats. Ignorance of this excuses no one from its effects. Best part is that knowledge of this avails us of its effects. This principle is the taskmaster to the unwise and servant to the wise. This is when we move from life appearing to be happening to us to recognizing that life is happening through us and that life is always for us. This is the turning point that we love to lead people to and give them the tools to navigate, because it's a lot of fun to see somebody get it. Things turn around in relationships, in finances, in work, in health, in creative self-expression, in fulfillment. Honestly, they do. And it's not something anyone can do for you. So we don't advise. Yes, we, as the fishing thing goes, we offer fish, we give a fish. But we say, sign up for a class or a group or get with somebody and learn how to fish for yourself. Because that is your true source connection. That is your personal connection to the infinite. The road to freedom lies not through mysteries or occult performances, but through the intelligent use of nature's forces and laws. Ernest Holmes also says, learning to trust will make us happy. Life reveals itself to whoever is receptive to it. The truth shall make us free, provided we know the truth. The evolution of man's consciousness brings with it the acquisition of new powers and higher possibilities. That sounds like Harry Potter, doesn't it? Wizardry. When we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. And this is beautiful. The finite alone has wrought and suffered. The infinite lies stretched in smiling repose. So here's the last thing before we close. No matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always something hidden in the inner being that has never been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering within our ear, not in our ear, within our ear. That thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings. And so it is.